Welcome, Sacha, and thank you for agreeing to do this with us today.
Pleasure. Great to be here.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I have got some questions that I've asked our change groupers that they'd like to ask you. I'm sure you'll find them very interesting. The first one is practically what everybody wanted to know, which was, what was your first job?
My first job? Okay, well, I did lots of little jobs growing up, from washing cars to cleaning out attics. But I think the first proper paid job was at McDonald's.
Okay.
That was at university. I was basically doing the late night shift. So I come in, clean the toilets, do all the dishwashing. I didn't flip burgers, unfortunately. But I did do the French fries and some of the till work. So
okay.
That was my first one. But actually, my real first one after university, so full-time paid work, was working in a factory in Birmingham, building aerospace parts for aircraft.
Okay. Excellent. Did you enjoy that? Was that interesting?
Yeah, it was good. It was hard work.
Yeah.
But what it allowed me to do was Monday to Friday work in the factory. We were designing bits of equipment and designing how the factory floor was working. And so at night, I was then able to study for a postgrad in financial economics.
Okay.
So it gave me the time and the space to be able to do that at night.
Another question, again, almost everybody wanted to know is, have you ever worked on the tills at Change Group?
The tills. Yes. Yes is the answer.
Yes.
I mean, we first started our first branch in Regent Street in London in 1992. And it was my mother and my father and myself that came together to do that. I was at that time still working as an engineer up in Birmingham. But when I joined full-time, my first position was in Austria. So we did a joint venture with Raiffeisen Zentralbank. And
that's a mouthful.
Had to learn some German to survive there. And I was at the till on a regular basis because we didn't always have enough staff. Okay. And so I would regularly do tills. But in those days, it was very different. Instead of having nice, fancy computer systems like we do today, we had Ford machines, which were great, big, clunky, oversized calculators, for want of a better word. And they had some basic programming, so they'd work out your GP or your commission on a transaction. But your safe books literally were books at the back where you had to fill in when you were doing a transfer from one safe to another or from one branch to another. And often, if there was an issue, you would have to do manual calculations on calculators. So it was very different then.
Yeah, I love that there'll be some listeners as well that are like, what, a pen and paper? Like no computer? So, yeah. I saw that you wrote an article, and it's available on your LinkedIn page, the link, where you talk about cash still being king. And I know, and I love the way you talked about this journey of the £50 note going through, touching different people's lives and stuff like that. I thought that was a really good way of describing it. But do you still think then cash will be king in 10 years' time?
I think cash is going to be with us for a long, 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 long time. It's going to be decades and decades, if not more than a century, before every single shop, every single person around the world takes only an electronic payment mechanism.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of situations where cash is still utilized predominantly. Imagine going in New York and tipping the doorman, or trying to get a table in a restaurant or a bar, or enter into a club without cash. It's just not going to happen. Even today, if you turn up in Berlin and you want to go and pay for your local restaurant, they will accept their local payment card system called Gyro, but they will not accept foreign cards.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, and the same applies in Switzerland and lots of countries around the world, Japan, the reason is the fees are so high. And as I kind of explained in my LinkedIn post, if the card schemes and the terminal providers for the cards are basically taking 3.5% on average. Amex, it's closer to 5%. Mm-hmm. Some of the others are closer to 1 to 2%. And then there's a range of clawbacks and monthly terminal fees and various other things. if they're each taking 3.5%, if you start off with a £50, €50, $50 note, and you imagine you sit down in a restaurant, you pay for that bill, that restaurant owner then pays for their laundry for the shirts of the staff using that note, and then that person then pays for their grocery shopping. The grocery provider then goes off and pays their staff. The staff pay it into after the 30th transaction of reducing 3.5, that means you're going from €50 or £50 or $50 down to only 17 after 30 transactions. It completely collapses.
Yes.
And that money is going to the banks, to the technology providers, and that's coming out of local communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so by paying in cash, you're supporting local communities far more.
Yeah.
So that's one also really important reason. And of course, there's lots of other reasons. Emergency use, the fact that payment systems don't always work, the fact that very often you turn up into a country and, it's happened to me a lot in Italy and goodness knows where they say, no, you've got to pay in cash.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't think about the fees that come with paying by card, but when you put it like that, and like you said, the 30th transaction, it just completely depletes it. It does make you think differently then and go, oh yeah, actually there is a benefit with cash. And I recently went on holiday to Portugal and did take some cash with me, but clearly not enough. I should have taken more. But even that, I was surprised how many times it was, cash only, cash only. Okay, moving over to a more business question. What are the focuses for our business right now?
So, Prosegur Cash is listed on the Madrid Stock Exchange.
Uh-huh.
And so their shares are owned by a variety of individuals and institutions like pension funds. And those pension funds rely on dividends to pay to pensioners, to put it simply. And so having stable, good earnings that we can return back to the shareholders is critically important, much more so than when we were a fully private company. And so achieving budgets, achieving targets is absolutely paramount. And there's two elements to that, because ultimately it's down to EBITDA.
I'm going to interrupt you there and just ask, what does EBITDA stand for?
Good question. Good question, yes. I didn't know what EBITDA was until my early 30s. So
okay, that makes me feel better. That's fine.
EBITDA is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization.
Okay.
So let's break that down. Earnings, that's obviously the gross profit on buying and selling foreign currency, commission margins. And then it's before the taxes that we pay to the government.
Okay.
And then it's before your, EBITDA? Earnings before interest, tax, depreciation. There we go. Depreciation and amortization. Depreciation is, if we go and build a branch, and let's say we spend £150,000 building that branch, and let's say we pay £10,000 a month in rent and rates and other charges. We have to apportion the cost of fitting out that branch over a time period.
Okay.
So let's imagine that branch has a lifespan in its current format of 5 years. So that would mean 150 divided by 5 is £30,000 that you allocate to that year's costs.
Okay.
So if we were to say, okay, we've got X amount coming in to the branch as gross profit, then we have staff salaries that have to be paid first, then the rent has to be paid, and then we have to allocate on an accounting basis depreciation, and then we have to make allowances, amortization, for other future things that are going to come along, such as bonuses for the staff, such as allocating further works, all of that. And so that then produces the earnings that we can then declare to the stock market.
Okay.
And then say to them, okay, this is what we promised the stock market, and this is what we've actually delivered.
Yes.
And in a normal, nice, stable year, By the way, I've never known one of those. In a normal, nice, stable year, we will achieve targets and budgets and everything's hunky-dory. The reality is business isn't that way.
Yes.
You get Olympics coming along. You get someone builds a competitor 50 meters down the road, or even closer in some instances. A new piece of technology comes along and people start using more credit cards or debit cards. So how do we deal with that? Do we increase prices and margins? Do we increase staffing levels so that we have more hours? Or do we reduce those staffing levels to make things more cost effective? All kinds of things can be done, more signage and things like that. But optimizing and maximizing that EBITDA is absolutely key for the business. So that's my focus.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for the explanation as well, because that word has been bandied around and I've thought no idea what that means. But yeah, that makes sense now. That makes sense. So recently as well, I'm sure everybody will have noticed, we've launched quite a few new systems. So we've got the People Portal for Sage, we've got the Learning Portal known as Thrive, and Human Force as well. Why did we do this, and what do you think of the new systems?
I think they're great. I think the money that we've invested in them will hopefully yield really great returns for everybody, not just in terms of improved reporting, but actually to make people's lives easier. What we're trying to do is really give people the very best tools possible to take their careers forward. A lot of people join us having gone through high school or whatever and have some okay skills, but not always entirely relevant to business.
Yeah.
And so what I want to encourage people to do, and what I've done for decades now, is really to give them the very best opportunities to help them to advance in their careers.
And why, it sort of goes on from what we've been talking about, but why is L&D important to you? So L&D being learning and development.
I mean, L&D is the difference, quite frankly, between being sort of successful and being highly successful.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Salaries typically, and bonuses obviously, make up our second biggest cost within the whole business. So we have to have people who are really at the top of their game.
Yeah.
And if you think about how do you get people to the very top of their game and help the whole business to advance, the only way of doing that is to invest in learning and development. I do it all the time. I'm constantly reading articles, going on courses. I just went on a course on artificial intelligence.
Yes.
I'm constantly looking at new technologies and techniques to improve the business. And I think that's a responsibility we all have. And by attracting great people that are willing to learn, willing to take the next stage, we're able as a business to offer opportunities that other businesses simply can't. I think it's fabulous that when we open up in, for example, you're going to Singapore shortly.
I am, yes.
I think that's fabulous that you're able to go over there, add value for 2 weeks, come back here, bring some of that knowledge and experience you'll have had from Singapore back into the business as well. And it's not just at your level or my level. This is at sales consultant level.
Yep.
We provide opportunities for people to go out there and when we open up a new airport to assist for a few weeks, a few months. We have programs whereby people who are really great at being sales consultants can become auditors and do a mystery shop exercise in another country to see how their colleagues are doing, and knowing their experiences of what great looks like help the others to improve as well.
Yeah. Okay. What does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, there is no such thing as typical.
No.
I guess there's two types of days that I have. One is where I'm based, where I live and work, which today is Spain, in Madrid. After Prosegur Cash acquired the majority stake, I moved with my family to Madrid. And then there's the days when I'm traveling, and I typically travel almost a half of the year.
Okay. Short
trips, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. But to see new opportunities, to visit existing operations. And there, it's really about, I have probably just got off an aircraft, go straight into one of the branches, the offices, say hi to some of the staff, and then meet with bankers, regulators, lawyers, that kind of thing. On the other hand, if I'm based in Madrid, then I'm going into one of the offices, either the Prosegur office, or I go into the office for Change Group itself, which is located in Grand View in the center of town. And then I'm doing a lot of video calls invariably. That's just one of those things post-COVID. We've all got video calls, which in a way lets me do more business without traveling, which is good because otherwise I'd really be on the road the whole time. And then it's meeting with the various teams. One thing I really like about having moved to Madrid is I'm much closer to the people in Prosegur Cash. They've invested a lot of time, energy and money in Change Group, and they want to take this business forward. And to align our strategy to help them to understand the business, to understand our needs, and to integrate both reporting and all of the other things that we're doing face-to-face makes a huge difference. That face-to-face contact, yes, I could do some of that stuff by video call, but it makes such a difference when you're actually physically face-to-face. So, yeah, that's my typical day.
As typical as it can be.
Yes.
Definitely. And how do you balance that family and work life? Because it sounds like a lot.
I think it's using technology is actually really key. So obviously I don't work 9 to 5. I never have done and probably never will do. From my perspective, we're a 365 days a year organization. People are asking me questions all the time, and there's always something going on, either positive or sometimes more challenging. And so the fact that I've got a device, an iPhone, that lets people from around the world be in contact with me anytime they need is super helpful, because I can be out playing tennis or watching a film or being with friends. And if there's something important or urgent, I can jump on that. And when I'm on a foreign trip or something like that, I'm still staying in touch with people via video or emails. So that's allowed me to bring in and multitask both that work element and also my personal element. So that's hugely beneficial.
What would you say is your proudest achievement?
My proudest achievement, I think getting through COVID. To be honest. COVID was pretty horrific. We were faced with...
I think everybody would agree.
I almost get PTSD when I sometimes think about that COVID time period, because we had to close down half the branch network. We had to, unfortunately, say goodbye to a lot of great colleagues, which was really sad. And getting through that, the people pulling together and making the most of the opportunities that there were, of really working with landlords, with regulators, and trying to help the business to survive that period and come out even stronger, I think is phenomenal. And thanks also to Prosegur Cash for believing in us and helping us to grow even faster coming out. So I think that pulling together, that teamwork is phenomenal.
Absolutely. And thank you so much again for doing this podcast with us.
Great to be here. Thank you.